She got my grill banned, shot my dog, and tried to ruin my family. Now her house is empty and I'm running the HOA. She called my charcoal grill a crime, harassed my daughter, and ended it by shooting our dog through the fence. She said it was self-defense. The footage proved otherwise. Now she's gone, her house is for sale, and the neighborhood she tried to control? I rewrote the rules, and this time, they're fair. It was one of those soft summer nights that feel custom-made for backyard barbecues and long laughs with the people you love. The air was warm but not sticky, just the kind that makes you want to stay outside a little longer. I'd been looking forward to that evening for weeks. It was my daughter's 8th birthday, and even though she begged for a big party with her entire 3rd grade class, my wife Jenna and I decided to keep it small. Just close relatives, a few kids from the neighborhood, and a lot of heart. Our backyard isn't huge, but it's cozy and always felt like our little sanctuary. Jenna went all out with the decorations, colorful streamers draped from the fence posts, a rainbow of balloons bouncing gently in the breeze, and a big cheerful sign that read, "Happy Birthday, Olivia," stretched across the patio. The scent of grilled burgers and hot dogs mixed with the sweetness of Jenna's famous homemade chocolate cake, and the sound of kids giggling over a game of tag echoed from the swing set. I stood by the grill, flipping patties, chatting with our neighbor Sean, who stopped by to give Olivia a birthday high five. It was peaceful, easy, just right. Until she showed up. Right on cue, as if the moment had been too perfect to last, Marlene Foster appeared at the edge of her lawn like a rain cloud over sunshine. Marlene, our next-door neighbor and self-appointed HOA enforcer, had a reputation that stretched wider than our street. Always the first to point out a holiday wreath hung too long, or a trash bin left out past curfew, she lived for the HOA rulebook. Her nickname in the neighborhood group chat was the Sheriff, though not in an affectionate way. And now, there she was, arms folded tight across her chest and a scowl that could sour milk. Jason, she called out in that sharp, scolding tone that made everyone feel like a school kid caught chewing gum. I paused mid-flip, glanced over, and gave her a polite smile, trying not to let the knot in my stomach show. "Hey there, Marlene. We're just celebrating Olivia's birthday. Want a burger?" I waved the tongs toward the grill, hoping to disarm her with neighborly friendliness. She didn't budge. "That's not what I'm here about," she snapped, marching closer to the fence that divided our yards. "That grill you're using? That's a direct violation of the HOA guidelines." I blinked, caught off guard. "Wait, what?" I glanced back at the charcoal Weber, confused. "Marlene, I read those rules when we moved in. It says gas grills aren't allowed. Charcoal's fine." Her lips tightened like she'd sucked on a lemon. "Don't try to school me on the rules, Jason. I've lived here 23 years. That grill is a fire hazard, and I won't have you endangering this neighborhood." I took a deep breath, doing my best to stay calm. "I hear you, but I've double-checked everything. The grill's on concrete, 10 feet from the house, and I've got a fire extinguisher right there on the table. I've been cautious." I motioned toward the red extinguisher sitting beside the sodas, but she wouldn't let it go. "It's not about your so-called precautions," she huffed. "Rules are rules, and if you're breaking them, I have to report it." That's when Jenna walked up, clearly sensing the storm brewing. "Is there a problem, Marlene?" she asked, her voice calm but with an edge that said she wasn't in the mood. "Yes, there is," Marlene snapped, pointing toward the grill like it was a loaded weapon. "Your husband is violating HOA policy. That thing is illegal." Jenna didn't flinch. "We've had that same grill for 5 years. No one's ever said a word. Why is it an issue now?" "It's always been a problem," Marlene replied, chin high. "I just didn't notice it before. But now I have. Consider this your warning." And with that, she spun on her heel and stormed back to her house like she'd just issued a court summons. I stood there, tongs still in hand, watching her disappear inside. Jenna sighed, rubbing her forehead. "It's Olivia's birthday, for God's sake. She couldn't just leave us alone for one night." I tried to smile, to shake it off. "That's Marlene. She's always got to have something to gripe about. Let's not let it ruin the evening." But truth be told, even with the kids laughing and the burgers sizzling, I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The next morning, I woke up with that unsettled feeling still sitting heavy in my chest. I tried to brush it off, told myself it was just another one of Marlene's little crusades, but something about the way she said, "Consider this your warning," kept echoing in my head like a bad song on repeat. I got up early, made a strong cup of coffee, and sat down at the kitchen table while the house was still quiet. Jenna and Olivia were sleeping in after the party, but I couldn't rest. I needed to know for sure that I hadn't overlooked something. So I went to the living room, dug through the junk drawer, and pulled out the fat HOA handbook we'd gotten the week we moved in. The thing was more complicated than our mortgage papers, stuffed full of rules about paint shades, mailbox placement, lawn height, even curtain colors. I flipped to the section on outdoor appliances, scanned the lines, and then I saw it, just like I remembered. Gas grills prohibited due to fire safety concerns. Charcoal grills permitted if placed on non-flammable surfaces and set at least 10 feet from any structure. I let out a breath I didn't even know I'd been holding. My grill was on the concrete patio, 12 feet from the house, and I always kept a fire extinguisher nearby. I wasn't breaking a single rule. Not one. I wasn't trying to be a rebel or cause problems. I just wanted to cook some damn burgers for my daughter's birthday. Still, the unease stuck around. I knew Marlene well enough to understand she wouldn't let this drop just because she was wrong. She'd double down, twist the rules, maybe even start making up new ones if she had to. And sure enough, as I was folding up chairs out back later that morning, I heard her voice drifting over the fence. This time she wasn't yelling. She was on the phone, whispering in that smug tone she reserves for moments she thinks she's winning. "I already reported him," she said, loud enough for me to catch it. "The grill's coming down. I don't care what he thinks. He's not going to ignore the rules on my watch." I froze, still holding a stack of paper plates. I looked over and saw her standing by her porch, phone to her ear, wearing that self-satisfied expression like she'd just caught someone cheating at bingo. For a second, I thought about walking over there, confronting her, telling her to mind her own business. But I knew how that would go. She'd twist it, say I threatened her, and suddenly I'd be the bad guy. Instead, I went back inside and told Jenna what I'd overheard. She just shook her head. "It's a grill, Jason. A grill. Doesn't she have a life?" "Apparently not," I muttered, and then I sat back down at the computer and started typing. If she wanted to get the HOA involved, I'd get ahead of it. I wrote an email to the board, polite, but detailed. I attached a photo of the grill, its placement on the patio, a shot of the fire extinguisher, and a screenshot of the handbook section about outdoor cooking. I explained everything clearly and respectfully, asking them to confirm that my setup was compliant. I hit send, hoping that would be the end of it. But deep down, I knew better. People like Marlene don't stop when they're proven wrong. They just shift gears and find new ways to keep the pressure on. And as much as I didn't want to admit it, I had a bad feeling that this little HOA spat was just getting started. A couple of days passed without a peep, and for a brief moment, I thought maybe my email had done the trick, maybe common sense had prevailed. But that hope got crushed the moment I opened the mailbox and saw the envelope. It was one of those crisp, official-looking letters with the HOA's logo printed at the top like it was from the IRS or something. I tore it open right there on the driveway, already feeling that buzz of anxiety in my chest. And sure enough, there it was, a formal notice of violation. Your outdoor cooking equipment is in breach of community regulations. Immediate removal is required. Failure to comply may result in fines or further action. I stood there stunned, staring at the paper like maybe I had misread it. But the words were clear. According to this letter, my grill, the same one I'd used for 5 years without issue, was suddenly a problem. I felt my jaw clench as I looked toward Marlene's house, half expecting her to be peeking out from behind the curtains. And sure enough, she was. Curtains slightly parted, just enough for me to see that little glint of satisfaction in her eyes. She knew. Hell, she probably drafted the letter herself and had the board just sign off on it. I wanted to storm over and say something, anything, but I took a breath and forced myself to walk back inside. Jenna was in the kitchen, unloading groceries, and I tossed the letter on the counter. "She did it," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "She actually got them to issue a violation." Jenna picked it up, read it, and let out a bitter laugh. "Are you kidding me? After all the evidence you gave them?" "Apparently, that didn't matter," I said. They took her word for it. That night, after Olivia went to bed, I sat down at the computer and started drafting a reply. This time, I wasn't just explaining things, I was documenting everything. I attached the same photos again, reiterated the grill's measurements, its distance from the house, the fire extinguisher. I even included a screenshot of the handbook with the relevant passage highlighted. I politely asked them to review the information again and reconsider the notice. I kept the tone calm. No sarcasm, no frustration, just facts. I figured someone reasonable had to be on that board. Someone would read it and realize this whole thing was nonsense. I sent the email and CC'd Jenna, just so someone else could back me up if needed. But I couldn't shake the feeling that Marlene had already poisoned the well. She'd probably been talking to board members behind the scenes, twisting facts like she always did. The next morning, I got a response. It was short and cold. Thank you for your email. The board has reviewed the matter and maintains its original decision. The grill must be removed within 5 business days. That was it. No explanation. No acknowledgement of my evidence. Just a final word from on high. Jenna was furious. They didn't even read it, she said. They're just siding with her because she's been here forever. It's a boys' club, or a Marlene's club, I guess. Yeah, I muttered, staring at the screen. She's playing chess. We're playing checkers. I sat there for a while, trying to think. I wasn't the type to pick fights, but this wasn't about a grill anymore. This was about someone with too much time and too much influence turning my life upside down over nothing. If the board wouldn't listen to reason, maybe it was time to find someone who would. I wasn't sure where this was going yet, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't backing down. After that second email from the HOA, things took a turn, not in a loud, dramatic way, but in that slow burn kind of way that creeps in and makes your skin itch. Marlene didn't stop at the violation letter. She doubled down. The next day, we found a note tucked under Jenna's windshield wiper, written in that same neat, all-caps handwriting she used for everything, like she was submitting a formal complaint to the universe. For your safety and others, please be mindful of flammable materials near your property. No signature, of course, but we knew exactly who it was from. It was so passive-aggressive it almost made me laugh. Almost. Over the next week, she made it her mission to make our lives uncomfortable. Anytime we stepped into the backyard, she was there, sitting on her porch, arms folded, just watching. Not relaxing, not reading a book, just watching. If I even looked toward the grill, she'd mutter something loud enough for us to hear. Some people just don't care about rules. Irresponsible homeowners are why insurance rates go up. Stuff like that. One afternoon, Olivia was riding her bike on the sidewalk out front when Marlene walked past and muttered, "Hope she's got a helmet that actually works." Jenna heard that one. She walked straight to the edge of the yard, stared Marlene down, and said, "If you ever talk to my daughter like that again, we'll have a different kind of conversation." Marlene just huffed and kept walking, but the message was clear. She was trying to push every button she could reach. And unfortunately, it was working. Olivia, who used to spend hours swinging in the backyard, started asking if she could play inside instead. She didn't say much about it, but I could see it in her eyes, the way she glanced toward Marlene's house, the way her smile dimmed when we mentioned going outside. One night, I was tucking her in and she asked, real quiet, "Daddy, why doesn't Ms. Marlene like us?" I swallowed hard. "She just doesn't understand us, sweetheart. Some people get upset about little things, but it's not your fault. It's not anybody's fault." She nodded, but I knew it still sat heavy on her. Jenna was done playing nice. "This is harassment," she said one evening after Olivia was asleep. "It's beyond the grill now. She's stalking us." "I know," I said, "but if we fight back too hard, she'll twist it. Say we're the ones threatening her." "So what, we just roll over?" "No," I said quietly. "We get smart." That night I started doing research. I looked up laws about HOA abuse of power, neighbor harassment, and civil rights violations. I started reading stories, and there were a lot of them, about people who dealt with nightmare neighbors and overreaching boards. Some had gone to court. Some had sued and won. The more I read, the more I realized we weren't powerless. We had rights. And if Marlene wanted to turn our lives into a legal chess match, maybe it was time to hire a better player. I wasn't ready to drop a lawsuit on her doorstep just yet, but I was damn close. Because this wasn't about the grill anymore. It was about our home, our peace. And I'd be damned if I let her take that from us. It happened on a Sunday evening, one of those quiet, golden hours where the world feels still and soft, like it's giving you a moment to breathe. Jenna had marinated some wings. Olivia was setting the table out on the patio with her usual care, and I was back at the grill, our supposedly criminal grill, trying to enjoy a sliver of normal. For the first time in weeks, we felt a little closer to okay. I even cracked a joke about not inviting Marlene to dinner, and Jenna gave me one of those smiles that meant she was trying, too. Max, our golden retriever, was wandering around the yard like he always did, tail wagging, nose sniffing, just happy to be part of the action. He'd been with us since Olivia was a toddler. That dog was more than a pet. He was part of the family, the one who waited by the door when we came home, who slept by Olivia's bed every night, who knew when you were upset and rested his head on your lap without asking. I had just laid the wings down, the charcoal hissing as the sauce hit the heat, when I heard her voice. "What do you think you're doing, Jason?" Marlene's shrill tones sliced through the quiet like a blade. I turned, and there she was, standing on her porch, arms folded, phone in hand like she was ready to call the governor. "Making dinner," I said flatly, already exhausted. "For my family. In my yard." "That grill is a hazard," she snapped. "You're endangering everyone." I didn't even argue. We'd gone through it all already. The rules, the extinguisher, the space. I just shook my head and turned back to the food. And that's when I heard it. A loud, sudden pop. Not a firework. Not a car backfiring. A gunshot. Everyone froze. Olivia dropped the napkins. Jenna stood up straight, her eyes wide. Then I heard it. Max yelping in pain. And when I turned around, he was limping toward the porch, bleeding. "Max!" I shouted, running toward him. Blood was pooling beneath his paw. He whimpered, collapsed, and I dropped to my knees beside him, my hands shaking. "Oh God! Oh God!" Jenna said, grabbing Olivia, who had started crying. "What happened? What happened?" And then I looked up and saw Marlene standing there, still on her porch, holding a small handgun like she'd just defended herself in a war zone. "He charged at me," she yelled, voice unsteady but defiant. He was barking. I felt threatened. I stared at her, stunned. "You shot my dog," I said, my voice breaking. "He was in our yard. He didn't touch you. He didn't do anything." "He was aggressive," she said. "I have the right to protect myself." Max let out a soft whine, and I scooped him into my arms, his fur wet with blood, my shirt soaking through. "Jenna, call 911, I said. She was already on it, frantically trying to explain the situation while holding Olivia, who was now sobbing uncontrollably. I didn't wait for an ambulance. I got Max into the car and drove to the emergency vet as fast as I could, my heart pounding the entire way. I could barely see through the tears in my eyes. I kept whispering to him the whole time. "Hang in there, buddy. Just hold on. Please." The clinic was a blur of fluorescent lights, urgent voices, and sterile air. They took Max from my arms and disappeared behind swinging doors, and I just stood there, numb. I couldn't sit. I couldn't breathe. Minutes stretched like hours. When the vet came back out, her face said it before her words did. "I'm so sorry," she said gently. "The damage was too extensive. We tried everything." I didn't say anything. I couldn't. It was like the floor dropped out beneath me. Max was gone. Just like that. Because of her. Because of Marlene and her paranoia, her obsession, her need to control everything and everyone around her. I drove home in silence. My hands were still stained red. When I pulled up, there were police cars parked outside. Marlene had called them too. Told them I had threatened her after she acted in self-defense. I didn't even acknowledge her. I walked up to the officers, handed over Max's vet paperwork, and told them everything. "She shot him through the fence," I said. "He never left our yard. He was barking, that's all. He was doing what dogs do." Officer Ramirez nodded solemnly. "We're talking to witnesses now. Your neighbor, Sean, has security cameras. He's sharing the footage." Jenna came outside to meet me, her face pale, eyes red. "I told them everything," she said softly. "Olivia saw it happen. She's inside with my sister." I looked over at Marlene, who was still talking animatedly to one of the officers, like she was proud of herself. She didn't look sorry. She looked satisfied, like she'd won. But she hadn't. Not this time. I wasn't just some guy with a grill anymore. She hadn't just crossed a line, she'd burned it down. I didn't know what justice looked like yet, but I knew this. I was going to find it. For Max. For Olivia. For all of us. The house felt hollow when I walked back in that night. Jenna had already put Olivia to bed, though neither of them really slept. The silence was louder than anything. Max's dog bed was still by the door, his leash still hanging from the hook like he might come running back at any moment. But he wouldn't. And that truth sat heavy on my chest, a grief I hadn't felt since my father passed. Only this time, it came with anger. Thick, burning anger that pulsed under my skin. I didn't want revenge. I wanted accountability. I wanted justice. The next morning, Officer Ramirez called. "We've reviewed the footage," he said. "Your neighbor Sean's cameras caught everything." He paused for a second like he was trying to cushion the blow. "Max never left her yard. He barked a few times, stayed behind the gate the whole time. There was no threat. I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. "So what now?" I asked. "She fired through the fence, Jason," he said. "We're charging her with animal cruelty and unlawful discharge of a firearm. Plus, she violated HOA weapon rules, which is its own separate issue." I thanked him, though it felt strange saying those words after everything. It wouldn't bring Max back, but it mattered. It was the first real crack in her armor. Still, I knew this wouldn't end with a police report. Marlene had done more than just pull a trigger. She'd torched the sense of safety in our home. She'd traumatized my daughter, pushed my wife to the edge, and used her authority as a weapon for far too long. So I made a decision that night. I called an attorney. Her name was Carla. Sharp, focused, no nonsense. The kind of person who looked you in the eye and didn't blink. I laid it all out for her. The grill complaints, the HOA letters, the harassment, the shooting. She took notes in silence and then looked up. "We're filing a civil suit," she said. "Emotional distress, property loss, community harassment. This is more than negligence. It's targeted abuse." I nodded. "Good. Let's hold her to it." While Carla started working the legal side, word spread through the neighborhood fast. You can't shoot someone's dog and expect whispers to stay whispers. Most of our neighbors were horrified. People who'd been silent during the grill debate started stopping by, dropping off casseroles, offering kind words, sharing their own run-ins with Marlene. Some even admitted they were scared of her too. "She's bullied people for years," one neighbor, Stephanie, told Jenna. "We just never thought it would go this far." Not everyone was on our side, though. Karen, one of the board members who always seemed glued to Marlene's hip, started spinning a narrative about how Marlene had acted out of fear. It was just a misunderstanding, she told people. She thought the dog was loose. She panicked. Let's not ruin someone's life over a mistake. But the footage didn't lie, and people were starting to see that. The incident had exposed something rotten, not just in Marlene, but in how the HOA had been run. Rules bent for friends. Blind eyes turned for years. Suddenly, there was talk of reform, of oversight, of neighbors demanding change. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel alone. We were still grieving. Olivia still cried when she passed Max's empty food bowl. Jenna still flinched at the sound of anything loud. And I still found myself staring at the yard like I was waiting for him to come trotting back in with that goofy grin. But beneath all that pain, something else had started to grow, a quiet resolve, like a foundation being poured. I wasn't just going to fight this for Max. I was going to fight it for every decent neighbor who'd ever been silenced, bullied, or pushed around. Marlene had underestimated how far I'd go. And now, I had nothing left to lose. I didn't sleep the night before the HOA meeting. I laid in bed staring at the ceiling, running through everything I wanted to say, second-guessing half of it, then circling back to the truth, all of it. By the time the sun rose, I wasn't nervous anymore. Just ready. Jenna and I arrived at the community center early, a manila folder under my arm stuffed with printouts, screenshots of Marlene's notes, copies of the violation letters, the HOA handbook with my highlighted section on grills, and a copy of the police report. Carla had helped me put it together like a legal sledgehammer. I wasn't walking in to make a scene. I was walking in to make it impossible for them to ignore the damage they'd helped cause. The room was already half full when we got there. You could feel the tension in the air, the kind that turns neighborly chatter into nervous glances and whispered side conversations. Marlene was near the front, sitting between Karen and a couple of other board members who had always seemed to orbit around her. She didn't look at me, just stared straight ahead with that pinched expression she wore like a badge of honor. The president of the HOA, a mild-mannered guy named Rick, opened the meeting with the usual dry updates, landscaping expenses, upcoming community events, a new stop sign at the corner. Then he cleared his throat and got to what everyone was actually there for. "We're aware of a recent incident that has caused a great deal of concern among residents," he said carefully. "Jason Miller has requested to speak." "Jason, the floor is yours." I stood up, my pulse steady now, not from adrenaline, just clarity. I looked around the room, meeting the eyes of people I'd waved to on morning walks, helped dig out after snowstorms, barbecued with at summer cookouts. People who'd lived behind closed doors while this mess quietly grew. And then I spoke. I told them about the birthday party, about the complaint, about the grill, about how I followed every rule, tried to keep it peaceful, tried to handle it privately. I told them about the harassment, the notes, the glares, the whisper campaigns. And then I told them about Max. I didn't sugarcoat it. I described exactly what happened. How he stayed behind our gate. How he barked, like any dog would. How she aimed. How she fired. and how my daughter still wakes up crying. You could hear a pin drop. Then I held up the handbook. There's no rule I broke, I said, my voice low but firm. But even if there had been, this is what it led to. A dog shot. A family shaken. A neighborhood divided. I looked at the board members one by one. If you keep letting fear and control dictate policy here, then we all lose. Because it won't stop with me. It'll happen to the next person who parks too close to the curb, or paints their shutters the wrong shade of gray, or uses the wrong mulch. Someone in the back said quietly, "He's right." Then a few nods, more murmurs, and suddenly it was like the room exhaled. People weren't just listening anymore. They were waking up. Of course, Karen jumped in to do damage control. "We appreciate your story, Jason," but Marlene felt threatened. "Let's not ignore that. Her intentions. I cut in, finally letting my voice rise just a little. "She intended to shoot my dog. That's not a misunderstanding. That's cruelty. That's someone who thought she could do whatever she wanted because no one would hold her accountable." Right then, Sean, the neighbor with the security cameras, stood up. "I saw the footage too. Jason's not lying. Max never left the yard." Marlene walked out and fired through the fence. There was no threat. Zero. That was it. The tipping point. People started talking. Not whispering, really talking. About past complaints. About the fear of standing up. About how long this kind of behavior had gone unchecked. Rick had to bang his little gavel just to calm things down. "We'll be reviewing all documentation and discussing next steps internally," he said, voice a little shaky now. "In the meantime, we ask everyone to remain civil." But the tone had shifted. Marlene still sat in her seat, stiff as ever, but something in her expression cracked, a flicker of doubt, maybe even fear. For once, it wasn't hers to give. As we walked out of the meeting, people came up to me and Jenna, folks we barely knew, shaking our hands, offering support, telling us they'd had enough too. That maybe it was time for change. That maybe it was time someone like me ran for the board. And as we stepped out into the cool night air, Jenna looked at me and said, "I think we just lit the match." I nodded, my fingers still curled around the folder in my hand. "Yeah," I said, "and this time, I'm not putting it out." The courthouse smelled like old paper and tension, that sterile, over-polished kind of place where everything echoes too loudly. I sat at the plaintiff's table next to Carla, who was calm, composed, and laser-focused like she'd done this 1,000 times, which she had. Me? My stomach was a mess, my palms sweaty. But I wasn't backing out. I owed it to Max, to Olivia, and to every family who ever felt like their voice didn't matter in their own neighborhood. Marlene sat across the aisle, stiff as a board, flanked by her attorney, a guy who looked like he billed by the minute and hadn't smiled since the Clinton administration. She wore black, like this was a funeral, and maybe it was in a way, just not for the reasons she thought. The judge was firm and all business, which I appreciated. No nonsense. No room for drama. The facts were what mattered now. Carla opened with clarity and precision. She painted the full picture, how the harassment started small, over a grill, and spiraled into threats, emotional intimidation, and finally violence. She showed the footage. She brought in the notes Marlene had left us, the copies of the HOA violations she'd clearly pushed for. She brought the vet's report, the police report, the HOA handbook. Every piece added another brick to the wall closing in around Marlene. The defense tried to spin it, of course. Claimed I was belligerent, that Max had a history of aggression, which was a lie so bold even Marlene didn't meet my eyes when it was said out loud. They leaned on that old fear-based defense. She felt threatened. But the footage destroyed that angle. It showed Max, behind the fence, barking, not lunging, not jumping, just barking. And it showed her calmly stepping out with a weapon, aiming, and firing. The jury didn't need long. Less than 2 hours after closing arguments, they filed back in, stone-faced. The foreperson stood up, cleared her throat, and said the words I'll never forget. "We find in favor of the plaintiff." I closed my eyes. Just for a second. Let it hit me. The court awarded us damages for emotional distress and the loss of Max, significant ones. But honestly, it wasn't about the money. It never had been. It was about standing up and saying, "This matters." What she did matters. Outside the courthouse, reporters had already gathered. I wasn't expecting them, but Carla had warned me it might happen. The story had picked up steam. Local news outlets caught wind after the police charged her, and now with the verdict, they wanted a soundbite. I didn't give them much, just a simple statement. This was never about revenge. It was about responsibility. No one should be afraid in their own home, especially not of the people who are supposed to be their neighbors. Marlene didn't say a word. She slipped out the side entrance like a shadow, her head down, face pale. I didn't watch her go. The fallout hit fast. She was asked, strongly, to resign from the HOA board. Her allies fell quiet. Her pristine house went on the market within weeks, the for sale sign staked into her lawn like a white flag. And when the moving truck finally pulled away, Jenna and I stood at our window in silence, not gloating, not celebrating, just breathing a little easier. For the first time in a long time, the neighborhood felt still, safe. The day Marlene moved out, the air felt lighter, not triumphant, not victorious, just relieved, like the whole neighborhood had been holding its breath and could finally exhale. Her house sat empty for a while after the movers left. That once perfectly trimmed lawn now a little overgrown, flower beds neglected, her rules matter garden plaque yanked from the ground. No one missed it. Jenna and I didn't throw a party. We didn't toast to her departure. We just stood out back that evening, arms around each other, watching Olivia toss a ball to our new pup, Daisy. The yard didn't feel haunted anymore. It felt ours again. But the real shift came weeks later, when Rick, the HOA president, called me. He wanted to meet, said the board had some things they wanted to discuss. I figured it'd be another apology, maybe a formality now that the dust had settled. But when I walked into that meeting, what I saw caught me off guard. They weren't just trying to save face, they were actually changing things. Rick stood and said, "Jason, we failed you. We failed your family. And in doing that, we failed the entire neighborhood. We allowed one person's vendetta to shape the experience of this community. And we're not going to let that happen again." They outlined a new initiative, a full revision of the HOA's enforcement process. No more single complaint violations. No more anonymous reports. An oversight committee, independent, balanced, neighbor-led, would now be required to review and verify any complaints before action was taken. Then Rick looked me in the eye and said, "We want you on that committee. We need your voice." I didn't answer right away. I wasn't sure I wanted to be a part of the thing that had nearly broken us. But when I got home, Jenna was waiting with 2 glasses of iced tea and a look that said she already knew. "You should do it," she said simply. So I did. Our first meetings were quiet but purposeful. A couple of other neighbors joined, folks who'd seen the cracks long before Max, long before me. We didn't turn it into a courtroom. We made it a conversation. It wasn't about rules. It was about fairness, balance, reason. Something shifted in the neighborhood, too. People started showing up to meetings. New families knocked on our door just to say hello. We hosted a potluck one Saturday evening, and more people showed up than we had chairs for. So we sat on porch steps, leaned against fences, passed plates and laughed. Daisy chased a tennis ball across the lawn as Olivia ran behind her, giggling again, the way she used to. Jenna leaned against the railing beside me, and I wrapped an arm around her shoulder. "You okay?" I asked. She nodded. "Yeah, better than I've been in a long time." And she was right. We were better. We weren't the same. You don't walk through something like that and come out untouched. But we were whole. The scars were still there, but so was the strength we'd found through it. Marlene may have tried to divide us, but in the end, she did the opposite. She brought this place back to life. It was one of those perfect summer nights again, the kind we used to take for granted. The kind that used to feel like the reward for making it through another week. The sky was streaked with amber and soft pinks, the air just warm enough to keep you outside, and the hum of neighbors chatting over fences replaced the silence we used to carry like armor. I stood by the grill, same one, still standing, flipping burgers while Olivia and Daisy ran wild across the yard. Daisy, our happy little whirlwind of a Labrador, was a different kind of dog than Max, clumsier, louder, pure energy. But she was joy in motion, and she'd somehow filled a space we thought might stay empty forever. Jenna set the picnic table with her usual easy rhythm, dropping a bowl of potato salad next to a stack of mismatched plates. Mike and his wife brought over lemonade and a tray of deviled eggs, while a few other neighbors trickled in, balancing bowls and folding chairs. It wasn't planned, not really. Just one of those we're around, let's eat together kind of nights. The best kind. We laughed. We ate. We watched the kids make up games with no rules, and even less logic. And for a moment, I let myself breathe it all in. The clink of forks against plates, the smell of grilled meat and fresh-cut grass. the soft glow of string lights swaying in the breeze. It felt good, real, ours. I looked around at the people who had rallied behind us, at the fence that used to divide and now simply marked the edge of home. I thought about how far we'd come, from that birthday party, to that awful night, to courtrooms and committee meetings and nights spent staring at the ceiling, wondering how everything had gone so wrong. And yet, here we were, still standing, still together. Marlene was gone. Her shadow no longer loomed over our yard or our lives. The HOA had changed, not perfect, but better. And me? I'd changed too. Not harder, just clearer. I knew now that peace doesn't always mean avoiding conflict. Sometimes it means choosing to stand your ground, especially when it's for the people and the place you love. As the last of the sunlight dipped below the rooftops and the first stars blinked into view, I raised my glass toward the table. To family, I said, to good neighbors, and to never letting fear decide who we are. They raised their glasses, too, and the moment hung there, warm and still and full of something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. And this time, I knew we'd earned it.